also need to start this up on Facebook, so give me just a second to do that. Okay, we should be good to go. Just to help confirm things, if you can hear my voice, go ahead and raise your hand in the Zoom interface there, just so I can see that people are hearing me. Okay, we've got some hands being raised, so looks like it is working. As we go through today, guys, go ahead and send in any comments or questions using the question and answer interface. Do not use chat. Q&A is what I'm going to be able to see, and I'll go ahead and do my best to answer questions as we go through today. So today's webinar is about Nebula. So Nebula is our cloud-managed networking solution. So Nebula was the first, what we call a full-stack cloud networking solution that was aimed at SMB. We launched all the way back in 2016 with Nebula. And at that time, there were other cloud solutions that were out there, but they were primarily aimed at the enterprise market. You know, some of the big names there like Meraki and Arrowhive were very focused on that enterprise space. And we wanted to take that, you know, good, clean, easy to use cloud management philosophy and apply it to something that was aimed at, you know, the SMB space instead. So Nebula is made up of a couple different components here for us. So I'll just go through these really quickly here. You know, we've got our security gateways, our switches, access points, our UTM firewall appliances. We've got our mobile app. And the key thing here is Nebula Control Center, abbreviated often as NCC. And this is really the heart and soul of the Nebula solution. So the idea behind Nebula was to take all of the stuff that goes into, you know, deploying a new customer's network for them and to simplify things to reduce the amount of time and the amount of money that you would need to spend to deploy those networks. So with Nebula here, we dramatically simplify what's required as far as installing the equipment. You don't need to send anybody out to do any configuration. You just need to plug in the hardware, make sure it's got power and is connected to the internet. We eliminate the need for separate monitoring equipment. The Nebula Cloud can handle that for you instead. Although we do still support SNMP and syslogs if you've got another system that you prefer to use for monitoring. You don't need to set up port forwarding or VPNs for remote access. The cloud handles all of that for you. Data storage, again, logs are kept in the cloud for you. And depending on the flavor of Nebula you're using, you get up to a year's worth of data stored in the cloud. And we simplify what goes into pushing out configuration changes, updating firmware, etc. So now we'll start going through some of the features of Nebula itself. So one of the things you can do here is you can start setting up your customer's equipment well before the equipment actually gets deployed on the location. At any point, you can go into the Nebula interface, create a new customer for yourself, create new sites, and start configuring most of the configuration options for those sites. You don't need to wait for the hardware to be delivered. And then once the hardware is delivered, you simply scan a QR code that's located either on the outside of the box or on the hardware itself, and you assign that to your customer and to the site where it's going to be used at. And that'll unlock some additional configuration features in some cases. And then you just ship the hardware on to the customer's location. There is no local configuration required of the hardware unless you absolutely have to use static IP addresses during the initial setup. Ideally, you would use DHCP for the initial setup and then move everything over to fixed IP. But if you do need to use fixed IP from the get-go, you will need to configure that directly on the device itself, but that's the only thing that you can configure on the device itself. Everything else is handled in the cloud. We've designed Nebula to make it super easy to get things up and running For a basic network, including wireless and guest access, you can go from registration to operating a captive portal on a access point in less than 5 minutes. We've got some extra tools in there which make it easy for you to set things up using a wizard. We can also go in and clone existing customers, existing sites, so you don't have to configure everything from scratch. So in order to use Nebula, there's no additional hardware or software required, so you don't need to set up a virtual machine. You don't need to run some special software on your laptop. There's no, CNAs, cloud keys, local area controllers, anything like that. The Nebula Agent is built directly into our networking hardware. So your hardware will reach out to the cloud automatically by itself. And no matter where you are, as long as you have a web browser and internet access, you have full access to all of your customers and their networks. So it makes it really easy. If you're on vacation or going somewhere and an emergency happens, you can get on there and make any necessary changes you need without having to worry about VPN connections and things like that. Nebula makes guest access super easy, so whether you're doing something like a coffee shop or other area where you want to give the public access to the network, or something like an office building where you just need guest access for visiting salespeople or customers, Nebula can do that out of the box. This functionality is built into our access points, so even if you're not using one of our gateways, you can still use our access points independent of whatever gateway that you have to provide captive portal guest services. And we've got a lot of flexibility with how we do that. You can set it up for people to just agree to a terms of service. You can have them log in with a username and password. You can have them register their own email account and set their own password to get access. You can use Facebook accounts to do logging in. So a lot of flexibility there. The captive portal, we've got a sort of editor in the Nebula interface, so you can make some very common changes to what that captive portal looks like. But if that isn't enough, you can download our HTML and CSS files, edit those directly, upload those back to the cloud, or you can have us point to your own server and your own web page that you've set up on your own system. So lots of flexibility when it comes to guest access. And on the wireless side of things, we've got a lot of the features you would expect to see. We've got smart mesh, so not all of your access points are required to have an Ethernet connection. They will automatically mesh to each other to find a backhaul that does have a wired connection. This is also great in situations where something happens and some of the access points get disconnected. They will automatically find access points that still have a connection and wirelessly bridge to them until that connection gets restored. We support WPA2, WPA3, and full enterprise security. And we support all of the industry standards, 802.11r, KV, etc., for doing fast roaming and load balancing. So on the switch side of things, we have our intelligent PoE that is carried over into Nebula. So this allows you, in general, to be able to use more devices on your switch using the current PoE budget than you would normally be able to get just using the official 802.3 AT/BT standards. Various network protections there. ACL rules are easy to set up. VLANs are easy to configure. We can do 802.1x authentication on your switch ports. We have things like loop guard to make sure you don't accidentally create a loop in your network. We've also got the ability to protect from unauthorized DHCP servers being outed to the network. And basically all of our switches will virtually stack. So you can configure ports across different switches simultaneously using just one interface. All of the updates are done over the air. There is nothing you need to go on site to be able to change or update, so that any sort of configuration change you apply, as well as firmware updates, those are all done through the cloud. We do have some intelligence there to make sure when applying some of your configuration changes that we apply those configuration changes in an intelligent manner which doesn't cause the device to go offline. You know, when you're messing around with things like VLANs and stuff, it's very easy to accidentally change things in the wrong order and suddenly lose connectivity. We help avoid that. Although this does lead to the one thing which does cause some confusion. So if you're new to Nebula, because the changes are being made in the cloud, there is going to be a delay from when you make the change to when the change is applied on the device itself. So if you're used to just directly managing everything, you know, you're used to, you change the SSID, you hit apply, and 2 seconds later the new SSID is broadcasting. With cloud management, it's generally going to be less than 2 minutes between when you apply changes in the interface and when they're pushed out to the devices. It can be in some cases up to 5 minutes, but it's usually under 2. But that is something that takes a little bit of getting used to if you haven't used a cloud-based solution before. On the security side of things, we make doing VPN really easy. It's super simple to create site-to-site VPN connections. You just go in, choose the sites you want to bridge together, choose the topology you want, click apply, and we handle everything else for you. So Nebula was designed from the ground up to be able to manage lots of customers and lots of different networks for each of those customers. So the interface has been optimized to make that easy for you to do. So this is just showing here, you've got the ability to quickly see for a customer. You click on the customer and you've got a view here of all of their networks. We have Google Maps integration, so you can have them visually represented where they are in the country or across the globe, and get a quick idea of what's going on each of those sites. You can then drill down into a site, and you get taken to our dashboard here. The dashboard is customizable, so you can choose which widgets you see when you first log into your customer's network. Some of the common ones on here is, how many devices are online versus offline, how many users are connected to the wireless network, PoE utilization versus budget, and if you're using one of our security gateways, we can give you all sorts of reports here about what's going on the network, which users are using the most bandwidth, which applications are using the most bandwidth, et cetera, et cetera. And then up here at the top, it's hard to see, but you've got drop-down menus to make it really easy to jump between customers or jump between sites. And once you're in there, all of your devices, you're able to see what's going on, not only with your devices, but you can see which non-Nebula managed devices are currently connected or have been connected recently. So like this view here is our wireless LAN screen. So you can see through here, you can see clients that have been connected but no longer are in red. Clients currently connected are in green. And you can see things here, which brand of Wi-Fi adapter they're using, which channel they're currently on, the signal strength, the SSID they're connected to, et cetera, et cetera. And just like with the dashboard, there's an ability to customize and filter what's going on, so you just see the information you want to see that's beneficial for you. Similar things going on here on the switch ports, making it easy for you to see what's going on with the switches. We use color coding so you can see the speed of the connected device, gigabit versus, fast Ethernet, whether the device is pulling PoE power or not, and you can check out here graphs over time as far as network utilization goes. For doing port configuration, again, we've designed to make this simple for you. You just choose the ports you want to configure. They do not have to be on the same switches. And then you get a view here with all of your common settings. You can quickly go through and push out changes across multiple ports. And for the most part, everything I've talked about up to this point is free. Zyxel offers Nebula as a free service. There are no limits to the number of customers you can manage with the free version of Nebula. There are no limits as far as how many sites those customers can have. Now, we do offer additional licenses which unlock additional features that are not part of the core version of Nebula, and we'll start talking a little bit about those. So we'll start by talking about Nebula Flex. So when Zyxel first came out with the Nebula solution, we followed a model very similar to Meraki in that, or Cisco, I guess I could say, where if you wanted cloud management, you bought Meraki. If you wanted with Cisco, if you didn't want cloud management, you bought their other series of products. And we did the same sort of thing initially. Our standard products did not offer cloud management. If you wanted cloud management, you had to buy Nebula-specific hardware, which could only be used with Nebula. However, since 2016, we have revised that, and now we have phased out just about all of our dedicated Nebula equipment, and now everything falls under the Nebula Flex banner. So basically, we've updated the hardware with additional RAM or storage, so we can allow most of our devices now to operate either in the traditional standalone mode or allow you to manage it in the cloud. So we call that Nebula Flex. So when you're looking at the price list, that's what you're looking for. Nebula Flex tells you that this device can be managed in the cloud if you want to, or it can be used traditionally if you don't want to. And the nice thing about that is, I know when you come out there, you've got customers. Some customers want the cloud, some customers may not want the cloud. And with Nebula Flex, you can standardize on one set of models for both types of customer, knowing that you can you buy the same piece of hardware and choose to use it either in the cloud or standalone. You will also see some products labeled as Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro products include 1 year of Nebula Pro licensing bundled with it. And we'll talk a little bit later here about what Nebula Flex Pro gets you that's not in the free version of Nebula. In addition to that, when it comes to wireless products, Nebula Flex Pro products can also be managed with a local controller, either our NXC series controllers or the controllers that are built into our Zyxel series of products. So just to give you an idea here, products that support Nebula, Nebula Flex is going to be on our access points, basically everything that starts with the number 1 or the number 2, such as a NWA 210AX or an NWA 1123AC. On the switches, it is our GS1920V2 series, the XS1930 series, and the XGS1930 series. And then on the security gateways, it is our USG Flex series. Going up to Nebula Flex Pro on the access point side of things is pretty much everything that starts with a 5 or 6 and is at least 3 digits long. So a WAC 510D, a WAC 6303D-S, etc. So those all can be include 1 year of the Pro Pack or can be managed with a wireless LAN controller. On the switch side of things, the Pro products are the GS1350 series products, the GS2220 series, and the XS3800 series. And on the gateway side of things, again, it's our USG Flex series, but those that come bundled with the UTM licenses. So most of you probably are aware, the USG Flexes can be bought just by themselves, or they can be bought bundled with the UTM services, Unified Threat Management. So if you buy the UTM version, it also includes 1 year of Pro Pack. We also have now our ATP series is now manageable in Nebula. That rolled out at the beginning of October. Although you don't buy Pro Pack licenses for it, it is part of a gold bundle license that you buy with the ATP. So now let's start talking about licensing. Again, all of these products can work with the free version of Nebula, which is nice because if you decide to use, one of our license series to unlock some additional features, when that expires, if you decide you no longer need those features, the products will fall back to the free version of Nebula. It's not like some of the other cloud-managed products where you lose the ability to manage the products if you don't maintain a paid subscription. We are not like that. In fact, I believe we're the only guys still left offering a free tier that doesn't have limitations, like, 2 APs or something like that. Ours are, again, free as unlimited devices, unlimited customers that can be managed. We have a Plus Pack license, which unlocks some smaller features for us, and we have the Pro Pack license. These licenses can be bought in a 1-month increment, 1-year increments, or 2-year increments, and you can stack them if you'd like to buy more. Maybe you've got a customer that needs Pro Pack for 5 years. They're signing a contract for that. You can simply buy the licenses up front, load them in, and be done with it and not worry about managing it. Now, these licenses, every device in your customer's organization needs to have an active license. If you do not have an active license for one of those products, you will fall back to the free tier of Nebula. Now there is a 15-day window on that, so if you're setting up the network, you're waiting for some more product to be delivered, whatever it happens to be, there's 15 days between when you add a device with no license or when a license expires until the organization falls back to the free version of Nebula. So again, just to summarize that, every device needs to have a Pro or Plus Pack license for you to use Pro or Plus Pack features. And if you add a device or a license expires, you have 15 days to add a license to that device before the organization falls back to the free version of Nebula. So now, what are the differences? All versions of Nebula give you that auto deployment, that zero-touch configuration, where you just configure everything in the cloud, plug in the device, and it automatically reaches out to the cloud and configures itself. All versions of Nebula have unlimited number of devices that can be registered and an unlimited number of customers that can be configured. All of them do the over-the-air firmware updates with some basic scheduling. All of them give you access to our mobile application. Now we'll start hitting some of the differences. So one of the differences has to do with the logs. So the free version of Nebula only stores 24 hours worth of log information in the cloud for you to access. So this is, both the configuration logs, the logs of devices logging in and out, as well as any sort of user stat information. If you upgrade to the Plus Pack, you get a week's worth of data stored in the cloud for you, and the Pro Pack gives you a full year of logs stored in the cloud. When it comes to the number of admin accounts that can be assigned to a single organization or customer, the free version gives you 5 admin accounts, Plus Pack gives you 8 admin accounts, and the Pro Pack has no limit to the number of admin accounts that can be assigned to an organization. User authentication. We have a cloud user authentication database that you can use in place of a Radius server for a lot of features. So the free version of Nebula gives you 50 entries in that database. Plus Pack doubles that to 100, and again, Pro Pack bumps it up to an unlimited number of stuff. All of the core network functions are available in all versions of Nebula. You can do MAC-based and 802.1x authentication in all versions of Nebula. All versions of Nebula have captive portal. You'll see here this thing called cloud saving mode. So in the case of the free version of Nebula, if you do not log into your customer's organization, I want to say it's for 30 days, it will stop collecting log information until you log back in and tell it to start collecting log information again. So now some features here that are exclusive to the Plus and the Pro Pack. Advanced firmware scheduling. So this gives you a lot more flexibility with how you schedule firmware updates, allowing you to set up different schedules for different individual devices or different classes of devices. Whereas the free version, you can schedule when to do your firmware updates, but it applies to all devices the same. Advanced reports are available in the Plus and Pro Pack. So these are reports that you can set up to automatically be sent out at certain times. You can add your own company's logo to these. So this is really good for those customers, so you can keep them looped in on what's going on the network. And generally, it makes it a lot easier for you to then resell them and renew their subscriptions when they become due, because you'll be able to show them these reports showing what Nebula has done for them. We have an automatic network topology view, which is available for both the Plus and Pro Pack, where we will create a visual map of all of the devices on the network and what is connected to what. So it's really handy for doing troubleshooting and tracking down issues. Both versions of Plus and Pro Pack give you access to get email alerts and push notifications when devices go offline and other criteria are met. And the ability to use Wi-Fi vouchers for authentication. So this is something you would use for something like more of a commercial type of public guest access. So that's available with the Plus and Pro Pack. And then Pro unlocks a number of other features here, which we'll talk about on the coming slides. So we give you access here in NCC, the Nebula Interface here. We give you access to more granular controls. We talked about before when it comes to firmware scheduling, you can go in and make individual schedules for individual specific devices. We give you access to much more detailed network information, including an audit log, where we will track every configuration change made and who made it, to make it, again, easier for you to go back and figure out, what's going on when you're troubleshooting an issue on the network. The ability to set up templates to automatically apply changes across multiple sites. And advanced user management, giving you this, this basically unlimited database that can be used for user authentication, 802.1x, MAC filtering, etc. On the wireless side of things, we give you access to machine learning, where we can essentially, monitor what's going on with your users, and you can set it up so Nebula can automatically make adjustments to what's going on to improve the user's experience with the wireless network. This opens up, on the guest network side of things, the ability to do self-serve wireless access. It also unlocks the ability to use Facebook Wi-Fi, which is different than Facebook Login. Facebook Wi-Fi is a specific program for retail locations where basically in order for a user to get onto your free network, they need to like your company's Facebook page. We give you the ability to use DPPSK, where basically you use one SSID for all of your users, but instead of using 802.1x to authenticate users, each user gets their own unique pre-shared key, and when they log in with that pre-shared key, that's referenced back to a database, so it knows what VLANs to assign for that specific user. So it gives you a lot of the flexibility of 802.1x, with a lot more of the ease of use of just using one, pre-shared key. So it's just showing you here the view that you get with the AI View, where we track over time, which users are having good quality connections, which ones are having poor quality connections, and showing you some of the changes that you can allow Nebula to do to try to improve the experiences for those users that are having issues. On the switch side of things, you can automate VLAN authentication. So basically, this is primarily being used for those of you that are doing voice over IP. You can put in the first few digits of the MAC address of your VoIP phones, and when Nebula sees those devices connect to the network, it can automatically assign the VLAN to them that you want for those devices. It unlocks additional IGMP settings for you to use. So something that comes in handy if you're doing IPTV on your switches. And if you're using our 1350 series switches, we have the ability to monitor connected PoE devices. And if these stop responding, we can automatically power cycle those devices to get them back online. ProPack unlocks an IPTV report, where again, we monitor the network, we create our own report of what's going on as far as IPTV is concerned, and we will detect a lot of common problems with IPTV, and we will summarize those for you in a report and even give you suggestions as to what settings to change in order to solve those issues. And then on the security side of things, by having ProPack, one of the cool features we've got here is we automate configuring mobile devices or remote devices to VPN back into the office. This is done by sending out an email with a script that will handle automatic configuration. It works under Windows client devices, it works for Mac client devices, and it works for iOS devices. So it makes it really easy to use the built-in VPN functionality in the operating systems of those devices and automatically configure them for your users so they can connect back to the office. ProPack, as we mentioned before, it's got that automatic topology view. It can also do topology of your VPN networks, unlocks advanced firmware scheduling, as we discussed before, and gives you access to some cool remote tools, including CLI access through the cloud to your security gateways. So here's a little snapshot showing you that automatic topology view. So in addition to our Plus and Pro Pack, which are for your client organizations, we have an optional license known as the MSP Pack, which isn't assigned to individual devices or sites. It's instead assigned to admin accounts. So it unlocks additional functionality for those admin accounts which have this MSP license. So it's generally something it's probably mainly aimed at those of you out there which have a lot of customers, those of you that, as the name implies here, are managed service providers. So one of the things it does is it unlocks this MSP view, which allows you to see all of your customers and get a quick snapshot of what is going on at those customers. You can see whether they're using the free or paid version of Nebula, whether they have any devices that have become unlicensed or the licenses have expired, how many devices are online, how many different sites they have, etc. So it just gives you a lot better view of what's going on quickly across all of your different customers. It also unlocks some additional features here. One of those features is MSP Branding. So you can rebrand the Nebula interface with your logo. You can replace our support information with your support information. So if you have customers and you're giving them access to the Nebula interface, they will see your branding. They will see your support information. It also gives you the ability to set up admin teams to make it easier to apply or add or remove admins to different customers. So rather than doing it one at a time, you can set up teams and then just assign those teams. It gives you the ability to do synchronization of certain settings between different customers. So if you're changing something that you want to change across all of your customers, you can do it all across all of them, just change it once and have it apply automatically. MSP Pack also now has added a new feature which will allow you to send email alerts for all of the organizations you manage, even if you're using the free version of Nebula. And then the next area to talk about is security licensing. So this is separate from the Nebula license. This is about the UTM features. So most of our security gateways offer additional features that provide things like content filtering, antivirus, etc. So those are, unified threat management. These are services that are provided by third parties through our security gateways. So they require an active license to use these extra features. So if you are using a NSG gateway, you would buy the NSS security pack. If you are using our USG Flex, you would need to have an active UTM security pack license. And then we also now have another feature called Secure Wi-Fi. And Secure Wi-Fi essentially allows you to take a Nebula managed access point and send it to a end user location in their home or whatever, and have that access point essentially be a VPN appliance, which will connect back to the main organization, the main location, and then you will be able to connect to a specific SSID on that access point, and anybody who connects to that SSID will be VPN'd back into the office. So it makes it really easy for remote users to be able to connect back to the office. It does require, certain security settings, including 802.1x authentication, so you don't have to worry about, the kids getting onto the wrong SSID and getting access to the corporate network. But it solves a lot of the issues as far as double natting and things like that go, which plague traditional VPN appliances. So this is just showing here, in this case, this is explaining that secure Wi-Fi feature. So you've got your USG Flex or ATP series security gateway here at your main office. You send out to each of your users one of our remote APs. They will plug it into their existing home router, and it will automatically then create a specific SSID using 802.1x and strong authentication measures here. Anyone who connects to that SSID will then be able to connect over essentially a VPN connection back to the office. And if you'd like to know more about that, I think Tri talks about it a lot more in one of his security webinars that he does. We do these days have a live demo available for you, so you can simply go to nebula.zyxel.com, and at the bottom of the page is a button for a live demo, and that'll take you over to a live site that you can poke around in. So you can do that. You can also talk to your salesperson here at Zyxel, Jacob, David, Andy. Let them know you're interested in Nebula, and we can send you out a 60-day demo of some Nebula hardware. And with that, guys, that concludes today's webinar. Again, if you have questions, send them in using the question and answer box. I will do my best to answer those for you. In the meantime here, just wanted to highlight for you, we have our YouTube channel, Zyxel America channel. So there's lots of Zyxel channels. Zyxel America channel is the U.S. channel for me and Tri and you guys. And almost all of our webinars are recorded and then uploaded here within a day or two of the webinar. So if you've missed something in one of our webinars, or you have another employee that you think could learn something but they missed the webinar, just point them to our YouTube channel and you can watch the recording of that webinar. And then we're also on LinkedIn under Zyxel-US-channel. And while I'm waiting for questions here, one other thing to draw your attention to is our web forum. I think it's forum.zyxel.com or forums with an s.zyxel.com. That is where you can go to talk to other users. But more importantly, I think, is our R&D team and our PM teams do monitor those forums. We will oftentimes answer questions. So it's a great way to provide feedback or feature requests. It is also where all of our firmware release notes, all of our security bulletins, they will be posted on those forums first. So it's worth checking in on those forums periodically to see what's going on. And also right now for the month of November, they are running a Nebula survey looking for your opinions on Nebula. So if you use Nebula or you've seen today's presentation and you've got some thoughts on Nebula, log into the forums. And there should be a post there with a link for you to take a survey and provide us feedback on the Nebula experience. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about Nebula, where you could see improvements, new features you want, etc. So a great way to help provide feedback. Nebula is constantly being upgraded. We try to push out significant updates every quarter that add new features, add new functionality. So that's your chance to help guide us by going to the forums and following that survey link. So I've gotten no questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. You know, if something does pop up that you want to ask, you can reach out to your salespeople or you can email me directly, SeanR@Zyxel.com. It is Sean, spelled S-H-A-W-N, followed by the letter R at Zyxel.com. Thanks, everybody.